on behalf of the City of Urbana Committee of the Whole, I will call to order this meeting. Would the clerk please call the roll when you're ready?
Councilmember Wu.
Here.
Councilmember Evans.
Here.
Councilmember Hersey.
Here.
Councilmember Colasetti.
Here.
Councilmember Bishop. Councilmember Wilkin.
Here.
Councilmember Quisenberry.
Here.
Mayor Williams.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, approval of minutes, which there are none. Are there any additions to the agenda? Seeing none. Presentations and public input. No scheduled presentations. No public in the audience. Were there any other emails or input to read? Seeing none, that concludes public input. No listed staff report. And that brings us to new business. First item is ordinance number 2025-11-031, an ordinance approving a special use permit for a solar farm at 1210 East University Avenue, plan case number 2513-SU-25 from Community Development. It looks like we have Olivia and Scott, who we haven't seen in a while. Welcome back.
Good evening. So on behalf of the Planning Division, I'm presenting a few background slides on the proposed special use permit for this solar farm, but we're also joined by Scott Tess, who is the applicant and will be available to answer questions. So the special use permit is to allow Total Energies Renewable USA, or Total Energies, to install, operate, and maintain a solar farm on the closed landfill owned by the City of Urbana. The city and Total Energies have entered into a lease agreement giving the company the option to lease all or part of the property. The proposed solar farm is the second phase of the development of solar energy systems at the closed city landfill. So the first phase is already constructed and is over here in this image. It's about 500 feet east of the proposed project site, which is in yellow. And this first phase of the solar farm was approved in 2018. Total Energies originally applied for a special use permit in 2023. The permit before you on the screen is the same special use permit previously approved, or sorry, the ordinance records the special use permit that was previously approved in January of 2023. But because building permits must be pulled within 12 months of approval, the timeline expired before Total Energies could act on it, and as a result, the case is being heard again. There are no changes to the application, site plan, or lease agreement details from what was previously approved in 2023. And the recorded ordinance passed with 7 ayes and 0 nays by this body. The preliminary site plan, which is provided here, was attached to the recorded ordinance in 2023, and the same site plan will be attached to the proposed ordinance as there are no changes. The special use permit covers the entire area, but Total Energies will likely only be building Array 1, which is before you here. On November 6, 2025, the Plan Commission voted unanimously to forward this case to the City Council with a recommendation to approve the permit with the following condition, which is the same condition that was originally approved with the special use permit. And that is that the construction should generally conform to the site plan as submitted and include a minimum 80-foot buffer to the center line of the Saline Branch Drainage District, the Saline Branch Drainage Ditch, that's a tongue tie, I'm sorry, and except where modified to meet city regulations. Saline Branch Drainage Ditch is just here below the yellow line between the yellow polygon on the screen. Yep. So that concludes the presentation. We're available for questions.
Thank you very much. Are there questions? Online from Chris or James, do you have questions?
No.
I do not.
Thank you. Yes, Mary Alice?
I can make a motion.
Sure, I actually have a question,
I'll hold.
if we could. I was wondering about ownership and the energy benefits for this. Would this be solar for all, low-income community solar like the existing arrays?
The incentive that the developers applied for is a market rate community solar array. They didn't pursue the low-income community solar this time because the site fundamentals and the incentives are different. Well, the site fundamentals are more or less the same, but the incentive package from the state is different, and so that didn't work out for them. So this is going to be a market rate community solar array.
So can you explain what that means for the community? Like, are community members or anyone open to like invest in this somehow and benefit from it?
So anyone in Ameren territory can subscribe to any community solar array in Ameren territory, and then any income qualified household can subscribe to any income qualified or low income community solar array in Ameren territory, such as the one that's already on the east side of the landfill. And in fact, we heard from that asset owner recently, there's still some income qualified slots open on that community solar array. And essentially, if you're income qualified, you can get a lower electric rate on these community solar array subscriptions. So it's a great deal. But this one, it'll be investor owned. So the asset is investor owned. They pay a lease rate to the city, and they pay taxes to, right now I think it's in a TIF, but that TIF is going to be expiring, I understand, so that would go to all the taxing bodies. And then, as I mentioned, any ratepayer in Ameren territory can subscribe to this community solar array. And those are typically offered, we call it market rate because it's not income qualified. They're typically offered at something like a 5 or 10% discount pegged to the default electricity supply price as it changes from time to time. So even though it's market rate, it's still kind of a guaranteed savings as compared to the default electricity supply rate through Ameren.
And so people should contact Ameren if they want to participate, is that right?
To subscribe to a community solar array, you contact the community solar provider directly. The best place to kind of get a clearinghouse for that is through the Citizens Utility Board website. They have a page called Solar in the Community, and they list all of the community solar arrays. So that's kind of the best place to go shopping, so to speak. Contact them directly. You subscribe through them, and they have a sort of a portal to the Ameren database, and they make that change for you.
Awesome, thank
This
you.
is the Citizens Utility what?
Citizens Utility Board.
And is that on our website, or could it be, especially the low-income solar that we're still trying to get more people?
That's a good
Signed up
question. I'll
for?
check. Yeah.
Thank you. Sorry, Mary Alice?
I just wanted to clarify, so with the municipal aggregation program, are we paying 12 cents? Do you know what the wattage is?
I don't know off the top of my head. That is update. I know that is up to date on our website.
Okay.
We'll have a new contract starting in, I think it's May. It's in the spring of 2026. But it is on the municipal electric aggregation page of the city's website, and it is up to date.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Or would take a motion?
All right, given that the other two items aren't going to be able to be on a consent agenda, I'm going to just move to regular business for approval, ordinance number 2025-11031, an ordinance approving a special use permit for a solar farm at 1210 East University Avenue, plan case number 2513 SU 25.
Second.
Okay, thank you. Move to regular agenda by Mary Alice, seconded by Sharice. Is there any discussion on this item? Not hearing any remote either. In that case, we can do a voice vote. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed, say nay. Thank you. That passes. Thank you all. Next item is ordinance number 2025-11-032, an ordinance revising the annual budget ordinance, budget amendment number 3, omnibus.
Good evening. Before you tonight is the budget amendment number 3 for the fiscal year 26 budget. And as a reminder, budget amendments require 6 affirmative votes, including the mayor. So this amendment includes several adjustments across multiple funds, and I will walk you through the main changes. To start, we have a few grant-related updates. So we've recently received a few grants from a few different places. First, we got $5,000 financial literacy grant from the African American Mayors Association. And then second, the fire department received about $68,000 of the assistance to firefighters grant. And the third one is that the police department received about $166,000 from the Illinois Law Enforcement Training and Standards Board to reimburse prior purchases, which increases revenue with no new spending. And then we also rebudgeting about $13,000 for the Sister City program. These funds were approved last year, but the program's cost will occur this year. So we are moving the money into fiscal year 26. And then next, the amendment also includes funding to replace the financial services office furniture that had to be removed after a basement flooding. The estimated cost is $30,000, and it will be covered by salary savings due to vacancies. And then this amendment also includes several adjustments to capital projects in the local motor fuel tax fund and the community development grants fund. These changes are essentially transfer between existing projects because the adjustments exceed 10% of the total project cost. So they require council approval through a budget amendment in accordance with the city's financial policies. And then in the VERF, this amendment will address a long-standing timing issue related to police vehicle purchases and their upfitting. So previously, the vehicle purchase and installation costs were budgeted separately across different fiscal years. So this amendment reallocates the funding so that each new squad car, has the appropriate upfitting cost budgeted in the correct account, so that will ensure more accurate and consistent accounting for the total cost of each vehicle. On the financial side, the fiscal year 25 audit is now complete, and all year-end entries have also been made. And after that, the fund balances for all the funds have been updated. So our general fund unassigned balance after this budget amendment will be about $15.58 million, or about 32.6% of recurring expenditures, which is $3.63 million above our current policy minimum. This number does not include the $5.7 million we have set aside for at-risk federal grants and the community engagement team pilot program. So I recommend forwarding the budget amendment number 3 to the November 24th meeting with a recommendation for approval. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you.
My hand is up, Grace.
Sure, why don't you go ahead, Chris? Was that Chris?
Thank you. Yeah. So can you tell me how much does a police squad car cost?
Yeah, right now, without the upfitting cost, the cost for each vehicle in the budget right now is about 47,000, around 47,000 per vehicle.
That's without the new 16,000?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Is that without, is the 47,000?
Yeah, that's before the upfitting cost.
Okay, so, all right. And also, can you tell me what is the total cost for the 3 police officers on South Philo Road over the 3 years?
I don't have that number on top of my head, but I can get that numbers for you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Mary Alice?
Yeah, I was trying to make heads or tails of the change in CDBG and the SIP projects. So I'm wondering if you could walk me through that. So my understanding is we're shifting some things from CDBG to local motor fuel tax because we anticipate a lower amount of money available in CDBG. Is that correct?
This, from what I understand is, sorry, I'm looking the wrong one. Give me a second.
We're just moving money between different projects in CDBG. And we're moving money between different projects in local motor fuel tax. But we're not moving money between funds.
So you're moving money within local motor fuel tax because of the cost differences that were unanticipated. I look at, for example, the electrical miscellaneous repairs looks like it's $31,000 more than what was in the budget.
Correct, but when you look at the net of all those changes in local motor fuel tax, the net is zero. So, sometimes it's not possible to be entirely accurate when we're predicting the cost of those projects. And so it's just a shifting around.
Okay, thank you.
Jaya?
Yeah, sorry, I feel like now I'm more confused by that answer because in the packet, in the memo, it says that the shift is based on concerns about CDBG allocations and declining from 275 to 100,000. So it looked like we were switching what was funded out of each account, but I think you just said we're just switching within each account. So that's confusing to me.
Yes, so this is my understanding from what I got from John is that because of CDBG funding, so instead of using CDBG money for streetlight and sidewalks, so now CDBG, now he just wants to use CDBG for sidewalks, and then he will use the locomotive LMFT fund for street lighting, and that's what the shift is.
So it sounds like it's both moving between funds and moving different items to be funded out of each in anticipation of that change.
Yes. So both funds doing the same things like street lighting and sidewalks. So now instead it's just doing both for each fund. He's just doing one for.
Kind of better aligning it based on the assumption that there would be a reduction in CDBG. Mm-hmm. Okay, that's how I read it, but I think the explanation confused me, so thank you.
Any other questions? James, did you have any?
No.
Thank you. I have one or two here. I think on that same line of thought, so when I'm looking at the budget numbers, I'm seeing 125,000 within CDBG at the bottom going deducted from streetlights and added to sidewalks, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And then I'm only seeing 25,000 increase in motor fuel tax for streetlights and 25 taken from sidewalks. So I guess I'm confused. And also in the memo saying that overall in the future CDBG being reduced from 275 to 100,000 a year, I'm really confused. Are we reducing CDBG? Are we not caring about streetlights? I'm really confused what's happening here.
For this, I will have to ask someone from Public Works to get back to you on that.
Absolutely.
I
Don't
have the
expect you to
exact
have that
answer
one
that,
open
yeah.
for any answer, anyone who feels like they have an answer. But I do think that as far as the budget goes, I don't know if there's anything for the next meeting that can try and reframe in some way so that we can understand a little bit about how this money's moving around, particularly with CDBG and motor fuel tax and sidewalks and streetlights, and if there's anything else you can do to help us understand that. Jaya.
Sorry, just a clarification on top of that for next meeting. Some context around why CDBG might be going down. I'm assuming it's what's happening at the federal level, but just if city staff could let us know if that's what's happening, and that would be appreciated too.
Okay.
Yes, Mary Alice.
Well, we're just going to pile on the questions. Elizabeth, I'm wondering if you could speak to when we might see a change in terms of the population special census, because I know CDBG is marked by per capita, and ours has changed.
So population is one of the factors in the CDBG allocation, but it's not the only factor. As far as state revenues, those changes have all been incorporated since sometime last summer.
Okay, so at the state level, we are back up to where we should be after the recount.
Correct.
And the federal is still kind of sort of working its way through?
Yeah, as far as I know. I mean, they don't share very explicitly how the math is done to determine those allocations. So I don't think we're ever going to know with 100% certainty.
Okay, thank you.
I also had a question about the VERF. I'm confused how the numbers are laid out with the squad vehicles, and I see a whole bunch of line items for over $1 million in each of those expenditure lines. I'm not seeing how that ties into the 47 per vehicle, and then the numbers don't really add up in the total expenditures. I'm really confused on how that's laid out on the packet.
Yeah, so the way that we have been doing it is I would start with the current budget, and then the revised budget, the next one right next to it is the difference, which is a 16, and then I use that same I bring that revised budget down to the next line. So the total increases would be 195,420. So the first line of the current budget for the first line, and then the revised budget from the last line should be the new numbers. This is just how we've been doing it, but I can send you an email with the list of the changes in the vehicle, which is easier to see.
Yeah, I think it would, because I'm confused what VERF PD 132 to 143 are versus PD 60 squads, PD 61 squads, like if those are vehicles or if this is a fund line item.
Yeah, these are vehicles, and the cost is about 47 each for these. But I can send you like a list of these that will make it easier to see.
Okay, because kind of that column like that starts with the 1.1 million is not the expenditures. That's the beginning fund balance for that whole account. Is that right? Versus the other numbers are listed as what's the budget, not what's the
That's
fund balance?
That's the actual expense budget in that general ledger line item. So the numbers that start like VERF PD 132, that relates to a level of detail that is more detailed than the line item budget. But I think Don can give you an illustration to make it more clear how that works.
Thank you. Any additional questions? Mary Alice?
I'll make a motion to send this on to City Council with no recommendation while we wait for more clarification. So I will move ordinance number 2025-11031, ordinance number 2025-11032, an ordinance revising the annual budget ordinance, budget amendment number 3, omnibus. Onward to city council.
Is there a second?
I have a procedural question.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think there's interest in separating out the firefighter grant from this omnibus item. When in this process does that happen?
At any point.
I'd like to make that recommendation to separate this motion to take that piece out.
Perfect. So only one member is required to make the motion to divide the question, and and you're specifying that you want to pull out the firefighter grant item specifically to be considered separately.
And the chair will not
Yes.
require a vote on that. But we do not have a second for the motion for approving
Correct.
the budget amendment. Yes, Sharice?
I guess what I want to understand is why no recommendation?
I just want further clarification that Don's going to give us, hopefully, or Elizabeth will give us on the police vehicles and also how the CDBG and SIP, all that relates to one another.
But still going on the regular agenda regardless
Oh, right,
of any
yeah.
recommendation.
Okay, so my next question, is also, can that be within the motion? Awaiting clarification regarding blah, 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 rather than just saying no recommendation. That's what.
We need it to be in the motion.
So you can truthfully put whatever you want in a motion. It's not required. Typically, we're just providing direction to staff about like what you're asking for. No like the recommendation outside of consent agenda versus regular agenda. It's a tool for you to communicate to staff, like your warmth on an item. It's not binding in any way, shape, or form. The only aspect of your motion is like approving it, sending it to a specific meeting, putting it on consent, or putting it on regular. Everything else is just communication.
Okay, I'll second then.
Okay, thank you. Moved by Mary Alice, seconded by Sharice for this budget amendment number 3. We also have the question divided to pull out the firefighter grant as a separate piece. Any discussion? From Chris or James? Seeing none. Sharice, go
Right
ahead.
here.
Yep, giving them a second. Go ahead, Sharice.
I guess I want to understand why the firefighter grant was pulled out of this.
Jaya?
Yeah, I can speak to that. I understand it can cause procedural issues, but I have an ethical concern about being asked to vote on something in an omnibus fashion that I previously voted against.
Oh, okay.
Now to add discussion of Jaya, do you mind taking the chair?
I'll take the chair. Chair recognizes Grace.
Thank you. We'll just say that will be voting no for the part of the divided question of the firefighter grant for the similar reasons that I voted no for accepting the grant in the first place, to have a lot of concerns about the strings attached and having any kind of agreement to the Department of Homeland Security right now. Thank you.
Would you like the chair back?
Yes, thank you.
I will relinquish the chair.
Thank you. Mary Alice?
So I guess I'm confused. Are we voting on, which part of the question are we voting on at the moment?
That is a great question. So presently, the only item that has a full motion in second right now is the budget ordinance without the firefighter item. Now, if the motioner and the seconder of that would also like to motion in second for the divided out portion, we can do that. But I'm going to recommend we take these one at a time so that we don't get confused for this very reason.
Okay.
Because at the time that it was divided, we didn't even have a second. So I'm treating them as that motion in second is just for the budget one without fire, and we will revisit fire separate.
All right, fair enough. So I don't have any comment in terms of the bulk of the proposed budget amendment.
Okay. Any further discussion on, we can keep it focused, lining us up for the upcoming vote will be for the budget amendment omnibus minus the fire department grant. Any discussion on that piece? Okay, and then why don't we do a roll call? So this one is for the budget amendment 3 omnibus minus fire department grant. If we could have a roll call, please.
Councilmember Wu,
Yes.
Councilmember Evans,
Yes.
Councilmember Hersey,
Yes.
Councilmember Colasetti,
Yes.
Councilmember Wilkin,
Yes.
Councilmember Quisenberry.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. That passes the omnibus part. And now we have kind of hanging in limbo the fire department grant. So if, I believe we would need someone to move and second to address that part. Yes, Mary Alice?
I am willing to move the firefighter grant portion of the budget amendment on to City Council with a recommendation for approval.
Second.
Thank you. Moved by Mary Alice, seconded by Sharice for the firefighter grant incorporation into the budget in particular. And discussion, Mary Alice?
Yeah, so I completely understand Jaya's motivation for separating this question. My opinion on this has not changed. I feel like this, while there are items within that grant that I do not agree with strongly, I do not feel that it is anything that holds us accountable, given that this is a one-time purchase. It's not something that kind of goes on and gets reimbursed throughout the time period. So this is kind of a one-and-done thing. So I am in support of this, just like I voted for it last time.
Thank you. Other discussion?
My hand is up, Grace.
Yep, go ahead, Chris.
Yeah. Having thought this over, I simply don't trust the lunatic king to honor Article 58, and so my mind has changed.
Okay, thank you. Other discussion? Anything from James? Okay. I do have a somewhat procedural question, especially before we vote on this. If there is any simple answer on what would happen if we accepted the grant and it failed to be incorporated in this budget amendment.
Question.
I'm going to direct that to finance because finance is the one that puts forward the budget amendments.
One second. This is not working. I'm a little confused about whether it's a reimbursement grant or not. If it's a reimbursement grant, we would never spend the money, and therefore we would not ask for the funds from the federal government. If the federal government was going to send us the funds up front, we'll have to see how they would come. I guess we would just return them back to wherever they came from. And without a budget amendment, we can't spend the money regardless, so.
And you said if it was a reimbursement, then we just wouldn't be reimbursed?
Correct. So without amending the budget, we're not going to spend the money that would have come from the grant. So if it's a reimbursement type grant, we're just never going to ask for that because we're not spending the money. If this is a case where they were going to provide the money up front, we would find a way to return it to the federal government.
Thank you. Jaya?
Yeah, I want to just reiterate that for myself, I think the risks associated with accepting this grant are too high, but I do believe we still need to provide the equipment that's needed by our fire department to make sure that they're able to perform their duties in a safe and appropriate way. There are some very serious restrictions, and I really appreciate all the time that the city attorney put into explaining the complexities of this, but aside from some of the stipulations that are negated elsewhere, there are other ways that definitely feel like overreach from the federal government, even in terms of any potential future decision related to divesting. I will put it that way. I can't seem to say the right word right now. So just want to reinforce that I do believe that we need to provide this technology to our fire department. I just don't think that this is, the risks associated with this particular grant are worth this amount of money.
Grace.
Yes, Elizabeth.
So understanding that, I could offer another option. So as you know, now that the books are closed on FY25, we have additional fund balance. So if you did not want to accept the grant, but you wanted to provide the funds for the equipment, right, we could remove the revenue portion in this budget amendment, but leave the expenditure part so that the equipment could be purchased. So, and if you wanted to do that, you could just direct, I think the easiest way would be for council to direct us to do that, and we'd bring back a new version of the budget amendment cleaned up that way.
Jaya?
I would like to make it clear that that would be my preference in terms of guidance for city staff.
I will echo that as well. I think we still need the radios, and we have the money in our budget to do it, so I support that. And then question if that is the case and we don't have the revenue in the budget, but I don't know if someone needs to check, but did we already sign the contract? Like, did we already sign on the dotted lines on the grant contract? It feels like if we already signed it, regardless of whether we say we're taking the money, we've signed it.
So as I understand it, the grant portal wasn't accessible, so it hasn't been electronically accepted by the city. So I think we would just never do that.
So saying essentially if it isn't incorporated in the budget, then we would not officially accept the grant because we have not yet signed on the electronic dotted line. Is that right?
Something like that, right? Yes. Even if it was in the budget, if council directed us not to accept it, I think we would not accept it. We may want to ask the city attorney if perhaps we should rescind the ordinance or resolution that accepted the grant. I don't know.
Yeah, because we did vote on that item already. Sharice?
Okay, so if I'm going to understand this, especially regarding you and Jaya, you would vote in favor of a budget amendment that would give us funds to buy to purchase our own stuff under our own terms. You will actually support that, the both of you.
Yes, Jay.
I'm making that recommendation for staff to prepare that ordinance at this time.
Okay, because when we last discussed this, you weren't ready to say that you would do that.
So I don't like to speak in hypotheticals. We know that there's funding available, and I can confirm at this time that if city staff brings that in front of me, I would be more than happy to move forward on that.
Okay, I just don't want our firefighters, blowing in the wind.
Okay, so we do have a motion and a second, but then we also have a direction to staff for some changes. So I guess I'm not sure procedurally, I guess with that direction for staff, would you ask that we hold off on this vote tonight then? I guess I don't know how that would work with that kind of change in revenue if that's not something to be done tonight.
So correct me if I'm wrong, Elizabeth, but I'm going to attempt to give you an option. So presently we have a motion on the floor already for approval of this firefighter portion of the budget line. If the motioner and the seconder were amenable to a friendly amendment, they would just have to state that it would be amended to remove the revenue portion. Direction is being provided to staff to not accept the grant, and they would come back next week with the revised version that doesn't have the revenue, that indicates the funding source from the prior fiscal year's unspent funds. Is that capturing everything that I need it to, Elizabeth?
Yeah, roughly. I think that works.
Okay, so if we were to go that route, that would be question 2, Mary Alice and Sharice, if you would like to friendly amend the approval to remove the revenue with direction for staff for an update next week. Mary Alice.
Well, I had a question. Is it, if the vote goes, if we vote on the motion on the table and that motion fails, can somebody in addition propose the motion to have it minus the revenue in the budget amendment?
That is a great question. So within a meeting, and we talked about this with the city attorney, motions to reconsider within the same meeting are doable. However, it has to be someone that's changing their mind, correct? So it would have to be, and that's a little bit splitting hairs given the subject that this is. If there is a desire to have a vote on this item as is, and there is a desire to have a vote separate on the amendment, I would recommend that someone, rather than a friendly amendment, someone motions to amend the current item, and there's a second, and we vote on that, up or down. Pending that passing, we would vote on it as amended or not for sending to council. I think that is the cleanest way to capture those votes separately if you want them to be separate.
I would like to speak if possible.
Go ahead, if that's James, I believe.
So Mary Alice has the motion and Sharice has the second. Unless they're willing to, unless there's an amendment to change what's on the floor, that's what we're going, and they don't want to rescind their motion and second, we're going to vote on this. And if it failed, essentially what would have to happen is finance would have to bring a different budget amendment later that pays for this equipment out of our existing funds. It's not a question of reconsidering. That's a different budget amendment in a different meeting.
I don't disagree with you that there's some gray area there. However, I would argue, and the attorney is here and can agree or disagree with me, and I don't mean to put you on the spot there, Matt, but I would say if in that instance, if it is as it is being sent forward and you're voting to consider it moving to council, if someone who votes no wishes to reconsider it in a different form, they could motion to reconsider at this meeting because it's the same meeting.
Yeah, I would agree.
Yes, I understand that point.
So I want to walk this through here real quickly. If we go through this motion and the motion fails, and somebody who voted no could say, I would reconsider if you would change X, then we could vote again.
That is correct.
Okay.
We could also do a friendly amendment, which means we vote one time. We could also have a separate amendment with a motion and a second, and consider the amendment first, up or down, and then the main motion. It's effectively the same as reconsider, just in a different order, but it's the same number of motions, seconds, and votes.
Okay.
And the motion to reconsider does require a vote.
Correct. So I guess that would potentially be an extra. Sorry.
Okay, so we still have on the floor passing the budget amendment for the firefighter grant. Looks like no amendment or no friendly amendment to the motions.
It's just going to cut down on the number of
I have
votes. Sorry.
That's
I
fine.
have another question, a
Go ahead,
procedural
James.
question. I just want to confirm if the vote is tied in the committee of the whole, that the mayor is able to cast a vote to break the tie.
That is correct. In the event of a tie, regardless of committee of the whole or council, the mayor is authorized to break a tie.
And do we have any proposed amendments at this point, or shall we go ahead and call the question on this part of the budget amendment? And so you're saying if this fails, then staff could still bring a different amendment?
I'd like to call the question.
Yes, go ahead. Deputy Doggett.
I just want for full transparency to share some of this, just going through this. Just so everybody knows, this does affect our future as far as that goes as well, in accepting this specific grant. So not that that matters, I just want to make sure that I'm sharing that information so everybody knows that before we make an informed decision on it. Thank you.
What information are you sharing? I'm sorry.
Just that turning down a grant that has been awarded will dramatically affect our ability to be awarded grants in the future, specifically this grant or the assistance to firefighter grants. So basically, if you're awarded these and you turn them down, you're not eligible in the future to be awarded these grants.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, any last call for discussion? Yes, Jay?
Yeah, I appreciate that information, and I think it's really unfortunate that we're put in a position to make this kind of decision. I do appreciate that and don't take it lightly. Just to reiterate again, do really appreciate the fire department for taking the initiative and doing what, City Council has hoped in a lot of situations of looking for additional revenue opportunities. Again, for myself, I think that the risk that we take on in accepting these funds from the federal government are not worth that risk, but I do appreciate that clarification. It is important, and it's going to require an additional commitment to make sure that we're supporting our fire department in other ways going forward.
Yes, Sharice?
So Chief Doggett, we won't, if we turn these funds down, then is there a grace period that one has to go through, or we will never be able to get federal funding grants for our fire department?
There's not a dead set. This is the time period that you can do that in. It's just a given that it's not going to be permitted, and that's historical. I actually just clarified that with one of the members that used to sit on one of the review committees for that, just to make sure that that is in place, because this is actually a conversation that's beyond here for the exact reason that you guys are talking about with the new verbiage that was put in it. So I don't have that answer specifically as far as never, but you're not eligible for future is basically what the reviewers are sharing.
Is that in the contract too, that could possibly happen?
I would have to find that information out. I don't know that that's specific to the grant application that we've put in for.
Because it definitely puts a whole new twist on everything.
I think that we will call the question. So on the floor is acceptance of this.
Grace, can I speak? Just one
Yes,
quick,
Chris, I don't think you've
quick
had a
comment.
chance to chime in. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to flag whose real fault this is. This is the lunatic king jeopardizing Urbana's public safety to extort this government to help ICE and discontinue diversity, inclusion, and equity. That's whose fault this is, not the council's. I just want to make that clear. Thank you.
Okay, so again, item on the floor, accepting this part of the budget amendment for this grant for fire department from Homeland Security. And we could do a roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Wu?
Yes.
Councilmember Evans?
No.
Councilmember Hersey?
Yes.
Councilmember Colasetti?
No.
Councilmember Wilkin?
No.
Councilmember Quisenberry?
Yes.
Okay, we have a tie. Mayor Williams?
Yes.
Okay, but it fails the budget amendment without 6 votes, right? Or is that in council only?
So that supermajority is triggered at council only for final action. So right now it has passed in that it will be sent to council. However, at council, it will require the 6 votes for adoption.
Okay, thank you. Next item is ordinance number 2025-11-033, an ordinance revising the annual budget ordinance, budget amendment number 4, TIF 4 ending.
So Olivia is going to do most of the presentation, but I will be here to answer any questions as needed.
Hello, good evening. So I know that the council members are familiar with TIFs and TIF districts, but I just wanted to provide a quick overview and summary, especially if members of the public are watching and are not as familiar. So just in terms of background, TIF districts are designated areas used by local governments to support economic development. Revenues come from the increase in property values within the district, with the tax increment deposited into a special city account for economic development purposes. TIF districts last 23 years, after which all taxing bodies share the expanded tax base created through the district's growth. The important thing to highlight here is that TIF legislation is controlled by the state, and TIFs have a natural lifespan of 23 years. So just providing a really quick overview of TIF 4, which this budget amendment touches. The TIF was created on December 17th, 2001, and will expire on December 31st, 2025. That is the natural 23-year lifespan. The geographic area hugs Cunningham Avenue with a northern bound at Olympian Road and a southern bound at East University Avenue. Just a quick overview of TIF 4 projects and things that the TIF has funded over that 23-year period. The Napleton Auto Group, Creative Thermal Solutions, Soccer Planet, and Harford Inn redevelopment. It also supported parks improvements for the Urbana Park District, vocational training for the Urbana School District, and various public works improvements along Airport Road, Cunningham Avenue, and the Olympian Drive extension. Speaking again about the TIF expiring, when TIF districts expire, the city has a few options for handling its remaining funds. If there are existing contracts in place, those funds can be encumbered for use within that original TIF boundary within 1 year after the TIF closes. And then any leftover funds not tied to obligations may be ported to an adjacent TIF. If the adjacent TIF shares a boundary with the TIF district, so in this case, that would be Central TIF. So tonight, the budget amendment before you would transfer $7.3 million from TIF 4 to Central TIF in anticipation of the TIF closing. Since we're talking about Central TIF, I just wanted to indicate that on the map as well. So you see that the geographic area runs along North Broadway Avenue with the northern bound at Oakland Ave and the southern bound at East California Ave. And that TIF was formulated in 2016 and will expire December 31st, 2040. Just a quick snapshot of some of the Central TIF ongoing projects. So in the past, the city provided 3 commercial signage grants, or actually more than 3 signage grants, a TIF RIP grant. It made payments for several redevelopment agreements, and the city is, of course, using the Central TIF to invest in public arts, infrastructure improvements, and ongoing maintenance projects, and it continues to fund technical services and provide development incentives for our downtown and the surrounding areas. So because we are approaching the end of the year, there are several steps associated with the TIF expiring. So the first, and that is TIF 4 expiring. So the first requirement is that the city notify all the taxing bodies by letter that the TIF is expiring. That is standard practice based on how the state legislature is written. So we've gone ahead and done that notification. That went out on October 30th. Tonight, we have a budget amendment before you to port funds from TIF 4 to Central TIF. And then we will also have an upcoming budget amendment to get TIF 4 to a 0 balance. And then eventually, or in addition, we will also introduce an ordinance to extinguish TIF 4 formally, which again is a requirement. So we're hoping to bring those budget amendments and additional ordinance forward on the December 1st meeting. We're available for questions.
Thank you for the presentation. Are there questions?
My hand is up.
Okay, go ahead, Chris.
Thank you, Greg. Thank you, Olivia. My question is, first question is, does the city have a signed contract for a hotel or motel to develop the land on the Pickerel farmland?
The city does not have a contract for a hotel or motel on the Pickerel properties. However, something that we have not gone into detail on in this budget amendment is the acquisition of Pickerel properties. The city received a signed conditional offer letter from the owners of that property indicating that they would be amenable to a purchase. The next step is that we bring an ordinance forward to this body authorizing the purchase up to an amount. We were considering doing that perhaps in a special meeting, but if not, we will bring that forward on December 1st as well. And the purpose of this budget amendment truly is to sort of set the stage and prepare for these upcoming actions. One of the actions being the potential purchase of Pickerel properties, but of course, that authorization would have to come from this body. So tonight we're basically preparing the books and getting ready, sort of setting the stage for that action, but we are not formally asking you to vote or authorize that action at this time.
And
That's not what my packet said, but okay. My second question, Olivia, is does the city have currently a signed contract for a truck stop to be on that piece of farmland?
There is no signed contract on that farmland. If there would be, it would have to be a contract between the owners of the property and whatever entity would develop a truck stop. The city does not have control over Pickerel properties at this time.
And my third question is for Elizabeth Hannon. Given the answers tonight that we just got, what are we voting on? Because the memo and the ordinance suggests that there is, if we vote yes, we're voting yes to spend $965,000 to buy the Pickerel land. Is that true or not?
So you would be voting to send a budget amendment to council, which includes the revisions listed on the exhibit. That's the only thing you would be doing tonight. I think as Olivia said, any property acquisition would require a separate council action, and that's regardless of whether money is identified for that in the budget or not.
I would also.
Okay, didn't see that in the memo, but thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Evans. I'd also like to just provide this because it was helpful for me in understanding the budget amendment. Is tonight we're creating a line item within the budget for potential for like an allocation of funds for a potential purchase. It's literally just an internal accounting measure to set the stage for a potential purchase. It's like dedicating funds in a bank account for saving up for something. And so it's an internal action. We are certainly not expecting the council to make a decision tonight on any potential purchase.
thank you. And because to clarify, I think what we're talking about is we're on the same page, that there is that amount for land that specifically says Pickerel acquisition for $965,000. And I think it's a legitimate concern because council doesn't approve everything. There are some things that once it's in the budget, that's it, and it's not revisited again. So I think that that makes sense as the concern, but what you're saying is we are approving that amount in the budget in this amendment, but there would still need to be another vote for actually buying any property. Is that correct?
That's correct.
I will also add, and Matt can confirm this as well, my understanding is that the requirement that property purchases be approved by the meeting body is a state law requirement, that a budget amendment would not rise to the appropriate level of authorization for a property purchase because it doesn't state a specific property and it doesn't explicitly state it is approving the purchase of a property. That is a completely separate measure that per state law, this body would have to consider.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, other questions?
I'd also just like to offer, just for my presentation, to clarify, tonight we're taking a step also to move to port funds. And so there are many administrative actions, internal and also, that need to be approved by this council. And we're doing our best to make sure we're bringing things forward to you in a timely manner, as efficiently as possible. We're very aware that we're coming close to the end of the year. The TIF does expire on December 31st. So instead of doing everything on December 1st, we're trying to take actions to sort of methodically chip away at this giant administrative hurdle and get the TIF closed out appropriately. So tonight, what you would be approving is the transfer of $7.3 million from TIF 4 to Central TIF, and the development of a line item that would essentially allow for future funds to be used for purchase. But if that property is not purchased, then those funds will just be ported to Central TIF like everything else. And that would happen on, I guess, at the next budget amendment.
Thank you. And I had some questions, I guess a request for some more detailed information about TIF 4 and what's been done with it. We've been talking about it for, many years about its closing and how are we going to allocate that money. It feels to me like Central TIF is the favorite child and TIF 4 is the more neglected one. And I see that there are still some line items that will remain in there, right? Like we're still planning to do TIF 4 sidewalk and street lighting. They're just reduced. And so I think some more information as far as what has been done, especially in this past few years push in TIF 4, and what is the plan for that kind of closeout of some sidewalks, street lights, and infrastructure. Because I think that's some really important information that people would like to see what's been done in that TIF during this time.
Certainly, I can provide you that detail by email or at the next meeting, but I also can respond now. In terms of the public works projects that you see that are not being ported, those are actually bids that we just closed on the Monday that we prepared and submitted this budget amendment. And the intent was actually to encumber public works projects for use next year. So there were sort of ongoing improvements that were happening to streets and sidewalks, but these are actually new projects that build off of that existing work. But we would have missed out on the opportunity to keep those funds associated with TIF 4 had we not bid out those projects, got bids closed, and are now going to have executed contracts in place before December 31st. So those public works projects that you see are actually kind of a Hail Mary attempt to keep as much funding as possible dedicated to TIF 4 for improvements, for infrastructure improvements, to honor the intent of the TIF, which is to continue the improvement of that area. So thank you for calling that out on the budget. That's correct. We're leaving those funds behind for that very specific purpose, and we look forward to presenting those, contracts at the next meeting.
Thank you. And we can port money between TIFs, right? If we were to create a new TIF, but they have to be physically touching, is that what I recall? So if we were to have a new TIF, potentially say in Philo Road, we could only transfer funds if it was physically touching Central TIF at this point, Or is that correct? Okay. See head nods. Thank you.
That's correct.
And also, if we could, or if we could have more information on considering additional property acquisition for affordable housing or shelter space.
Additional property acquisition within TIF 4?
Yes.
Okay.
Other questions? Any from our remote people? Anything else from Chris or James?
No, I have a kind of more of a point of information question. Maybe this goes to Matt. Who's responsible from a staff or from I don't know if it's a clerk to identify if we are through a question and answer process straying into an area where we need to consider whether the discussion should be held in closed session? What's the guardrails for that?
The short answer is, James, there aren't. Those are sort of based upon the norms and the manner in which council chooses to conduct business. Closed session exceptions under OMA they're not mandatory. Certainly, council can opt to discuss things that are traditionally closed session items in open session, but there are many-fold reasons why that would be often not a good idea, either from a strategic standpoint, if you're talking about the acquisition of real estate, or collective bargaining, personnel, any number of matters. So there's not a legal guardrail to say, hey, we need to move this into closed session. It's more of a thing that's the council would choose to do in terms of its the manner in which it operates and professional judgment. So.
Well, I gotta raise a question about that, because we are advised to consider things in closed session by staff. That's typically how it happens. And so if we accidentally start walking towards something that staff would want us to consider, if it involves property acquisition for whatever, something like that, it seems to me that someone on staff has to be responsible for, raising their hand and saying, this is getting close to something that might interfere with our ability to do what we plan to do, and we're eligible to take this to closed session. But I got to know that somebody's doing that, because somebody does it when we have a closed session. Somebody thought this is going to be sensitive and we're allowed to talk about it in closed session because of an approved exception to the OMA. Who's doing that if we accidentally wander into that kind of space in a discussion unexpectedly?
I would like to respond. The city attorney will correct me as needed. So I am doing that for this particular action. James, thank you for that question. So I would welcome support from this body and the clerk or the city attorney if we are tiptoeing towards that. But in anticipation of this evening's conversation, I did discuss the content with the owners of the property in question and notified them that we would be discussing it at a high level. I feel comfortable with that information being shared with the owners, and also this information being shared with this body and the public, because we do have a signed conditional offer letter in hand, which will be shared with this body shortly. But with that said, the council member brings forward a very important question, and I would welcome support from this body as we engage in these more nuanced conversations around acquisition of property. Thank you.
I would also just like to clarify, James, to your point, generally speaking, in the meeting, it is the clerk that handles these lanes. I welcome support from the city attorney, and I actually had a conversation with Community Development Director Olivia today in my office about this and the timing of these items, as well as the sensitivity of the items and the order in which they are appearing before this body over the next couple of weeks. And while there is already some information in this packet that details this, I would caution that any hypothetical strategy-based discussions should probably not be had at this time, as they're not relevant to the item on the floor, and also possibly get us into an area that's a little bit more gray and murky as it pertains to closed session. That being said, obviously, I don't have a crystal ball and I don't know what people are going to say before they say them. But to the best of my ability, I will interrupt and stop when I can if we are approaching something that shouldn't be discussed in open session. I don't feel that we quite met that threshold based off of what is sensitive at this point in time this evening.
My hand is
Thank
up.
you, Darcy.
My hand is up.
Thank you. Is that Chris with your hand up? Go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Chris.
So, yeah, thank you. I think the train has left the station. In this memorandum, in this agenda packet, there were several paragraphs written by staff that attempted to persuade council to buy the Pickerel land, the farmland, and gave reasons why that would be a good investment.
Point of order, Chris. I'm sorry, I'm not trying to be rude, but aren't we on questions? I just want to make sure that we're
correct. We are on questions at this point. There is no motion or second at this time.
Okay.
Can I make a motion so we can have discussion? Because I will say that I'd like to make a point as well. Chair, is it okay if I make that motion?
Sure.
I'd like to move for approval ordinance number 2025-11-033, an ordinance revising the annual budget ordinance, budget amendment number 4, TIF 4 ending for approval.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Moved by Jaya, seconded by Mary Alice. We could discussion. I'll let Chris finish your discussion comment and then open it for other discussion.
Thanks, Jaya, for getting us back on point. But I'm just going to say that the Pickerel land acquisition was made public Thursday to the entire public and council. And in fact, there were several paragraphs attempting to persuade council to accept the Pickerel acquisition. So, James, in my view, it's fair game to talk about publicly.
Okay, thank you. Jaya?
Yeah, I wanted to raise a couple things. One, I appreciate going back over TIFs. I think TIFs are extremely confusing, I will say, at least for myself. When I started on council, it didn't make any sense, so I really appreciate the clarification. But I also want to commend staff for trying to spend as much of the funds that are available in TIF 4 before it expires. I've seen an incredible acceleration of efforts in that area since this administration has taken over. So I want to say thank you to this administration. And Olivia, I know your team has been very short-staffed, so making that happen is much appreciated. That there has been intentionality to make sure that the TIFs were connected so that we can continue to use those funds for future projects. And I appreciate the questions about how we should be mindful about what is discussed in closed session. But I also just want to suggest a note of caution that the way that conversation may have been read or may have come across was pretty critical of suggesting staff or the clerk has done something wrong. And I would like to counter that message. I think that there's been a lot of very clear intentionality about how this has been brought forward to us, what conversations have been had in closed session, what conversations have been made public, what information has been made public. So I just want to kind of share my perspective that that is consistent with my experience of the staff under this administration, and certainly in terms of the clerk, that there is forethought in terms of what is shared publicly versus in closed session. And I think to challenge everyone who's on part of this body to think about our responsibility in terms of sharing information that is made public at a given time versus discussed in closed session. Closed session is an opportunity for strategic conversations, not for making any commitments in terms of future action, but to make sure that we are making informed decisions. So I think, conversations that may have been had related to TIF4 or any potential purchases, I think that the responsibility should also lie with individual council members to think about how are we benefiting the well-being of the city to let the staff do their jobs in a way that is unimpeded. I hear Chris's point of feeling like there's a certain pressure to move a certain direction. I don't personally feel that way. So I just want to state that there are multiple ways of interpreting things. Creating a line item for a potential purchase to me doesn't mean accepting or trying to influence the council in any particular way. And while I think the questions are helpful and needed, and it's important that we're clear, I also just want to be mindful and respectful of the fact that a lot of our departments are stretched pretty thin right now and are working really hard to make sure that the city's function continues to function as moving forward. And while there are decisions that sometimes we make that city staff are probably not thrilled about, continue to show up and be professional and make sure that we have the information that we need.
Thank you. Is there other discussion? Okay, see.
Yeah, I would like to say something.
Okay, go ahead, James.
Do we have a motion on the floor? Yeah. So this is a process of closing TIF4 that was essentially set in motion when we had the vote to connect TIF4 to Central TIF. At that time, the staff was really clear about what the purpose of that was, the end of TIF4 was coming. There was an expectation that it would close. At this point, there is no option for TIF4 continuing, and so I'm gonna support this. And I do want to say that my question, being not in the room, not having the full value of being able to see people and observe all of what's going on with any conversation. I was not particularly concerned about the question about the property, but the additional questions about signed contracts, about other things, I did not know if any of those might be sensitive. And I just wanted to ask the question out loud as to who would help us if in our pursuit of a particular point, and I am guilty of this as much as anybody else is, once we pursue a particular point, sometimes we lose track of some of the other impacts that might be going on. Like, as you rightfully pointed out, my intent was not to call Darcy out or call staff out. I just wanted to know that I wanted to make sure that it was clear to them that they should be comfortable telling us if there were reasons why we should consider whether that we were crossing into a territory where the city's ability to do what we would like it to do could be impacted adversely by disclosing things that were not fully baked. And the closed session is for things that are not fully baked or possibilities, and talking about them without putting the city at a disadvantage in a place where negotiation might happen. That is protecting the citizens and their investment, their money that they have given us. If we disclose information about a potential contract that adversely affects the city's position in that, we're not being good fiduciaries of our citizens' tax money. So I intended to support this. I think this was the path we were going on. I don't think we could have extended TIF 4 even if there had been a change of mind in the last year.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion? Okay, then we can call the question. If we could have a roll call. Again, on the floor is budget amendment number 4 on to City Council.
Councilmember Wu,
Yes.
Councilmember Evans,
Yes.
Councilmember Hersey,
Yes.
Councilmember Colasetti,
Yes.
Councilmember Wilkin,
Yes.
Councilmember Quisenberry.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. That passes on to City Council. And our last item is a discussion. I'm not sure which version people are looking at, but it was amended that this is a discussion, not unfinished business, although it might say on paper, but it was amended. This is a discussion on ordinance number 2024-12-042, ordinance establishing approval policy and reporting requirements for policing surveillance technology and databases, title subject to change. And so with a discussion, I've provided a version 7 update and a memo and some of the definitions, kind of side-by-side comparison that we discussed last week. And then Mary Alice and James have also submitted a version 7.1 and some of those notes. So I'm open to how we would like to do the discussion tonight, kind of where to start. Looked like version 7 was mostly accepted, and then there were some additional changes on 7.1, so I don't know how we want to take these versions, so open to suggestions.
Can I
Mary?
very briefly, just as a housekeeping measure for those of us physically in chambers, the paperclip packet that has item G1 in the upper right-hand corner is the stuff that Councilmember Wilkin provided ahead of time and was published online in the website. And then the other one that has the bullet points, looks like this, is the materials that were emailed by Councilmember Quisenberry and Councilmember Wu on Sunday. So just for those in chambers, those are your 2 bundles. I believe everything that has been given to you materials-wise intended for this meeting, you have printed here in chambers tonight.
Great, thank you. And Mary Alice?
Yeah, I thought I would ask the chair if you would be okay with me kind of summarizing some of the things that we were proposing as part of the start of that conversation.
Yes, and then did you want to maybe take them one at a time, or do you want to give us a whole overview first?
I thought I would just kind of give everybody an overview in terms of what the thought process was behind some of these suggested changes, and then we can go from there in terms of which direction people would like.
Okay, sure, go ahead.
All right, so first of all, I'd like to say that we started with what Grace has been working on so diligently over the past couple of months, and we kind of took that proposed ordinance and did a couple of things based on conversations that we've had in council and committee, as well as some of the straw poll votes that we had a while ago. So there's really, I believe there's 3 big things that we're kind of proposing. The first one is that this ordinance cover the police department, but doesn't cover all city departments. The second one was we've been tangled up in some of the definitions of databases. And looking at the definitions in attachment A that talks about surveillance technology and surveillance databases, it's explicit in that it says that a surveillance database is from surveillance technology. And so with that lens, we felt that it was more clear to go through in all of the different now therefores to reference, rather than saying and databases, reference the data that it collects. So the data that the surveillance technology collects. And then the third one, which is there are several instances where and I don't want to speak completely for James here, but I felt like some of what Oak Park had used I thought would work very well here. I will confess that we primarily looked at the Oak Park one and not at the other ones, primarily because Oak Park is in the state of Illinois. it's gone through some of that process. It's not a huge town, so it's more of a medium-sized town. So we really kind of relied heavily on Oak Park. There, of course, are other smaller things that I'm happy to go over, but I kind of wanted to set the stage in terms of the items that we thought we would propose to the group. So making it for the police department and not all cities, removing a lot of the database language and talking about the data that is collected from surveillance technology, and then leveraging some of the work that Oak Park did. Those are kind of, in summary, those are three big things. And if the chair is okay with it, I'd ask if James would fill in anything that I have not stated already.
So James, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I would add that at one point when we were discussing data and surveillance technology, there was a concern raised about data that was maybe not originally collected by a surveillance technology, but a new technology was being brought to bear on that data. And my feeling is that is related to that technology that transforms the data into something that wasn't surveillance, into something that was surveillance, is the thing that we're focusing on, not particularly the data at rest as we talk about it. So the other thing I would add, Mary Alice, is there's a few things in here that are about language that seem to be a little more difficult to parse, and suggestions about how we might be able to simplify those points, and that would be the kind of the fourth area that I would mention. And I will also say that the reason why we did this and the way we did it was we wanted to start specifically from Grace's version that was current. We wanted to address things that we felt like we had given feedback on over time, and heard things that we thought were supportive of that feedback, but that had not appeared yet in the draft. And we did it in such a way that all of the changes that we did are documented, except maybe a few like grammatical or slight typographical corrections. They're all listed here so that any one of them or batch of them that are related could be pulled out and addressed in a conversation. It wasn't meant to imply that here's what you got to accept, this is what we want. No, this is I heard very clearly from Jaya previously that this is stalled out, and one of the reasons why I was feeling it was stalled out is feedback that had been given did not get into a future document. And so to do our part in that, we wanted to make it much more clear what that feedback would mean in terms of updating the document.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Jaya?
Yeah, I'll just say, I think this gives us a good starting point. Thank you to the clerk for having all the materials in front of us. Thank you to James and Mary Alice for compiling. It is very difficult to keep track of everyone's feedback with all the emails and conversations happening, so I do appreciate the time to get everything organized. I think we're in a much better place to move this conversation forward.
Thank you. And I have some things to add. Jay, would you mind taking the chair?
Sure. I will take the chair, and the chair recognizes Grace.
Thank you. I appreciate you, Mary Alice and James, taking some time to thoroughly review this and give some of your feedback. And I think that's helpful, and appreciate going off of version 7 to 7.1. And did want to clarify that some of the feedback I was also kind of holding off on too, so would be happy to have these discussions outside of meeting as well as allowed. But things like, we've gone back and forth over the past 10 months that this has been in committee of the whole, of like, was it policing technology, and then it was surveillance technology, and then we were talking about surveillance technology and surveillance databases, and then, well, maybe we'll just get rid of databases because it's defined under surveillance technology. So I was hearing all those things, but I was also kind of holding off until we made a final decision instead of going through the document and changing those things that are arguably wording differences. So I did hear you on that, and it looks like y'all went the route of just removing the word database, which makes sense because it's already defined under surveillance technology. So that makes sense. And again, just wanted to clarify that I heard that, but was also kind of waiting until we had decided a little more. And then I think that a lot of these changes are not super major or are fine. I think that there are some that I would like to go through, if that's okay, while I'm chair-free and have the floor. I think that we still need to have a conversation about if this applies to all departments or just police. That was a straw poll in a discussion only. It was nothing binding in any way. It was not an official amendment. I think it's premature decision because we still haven't finalized the definitions. And for example, location tracking and GPS tracking is a clear definition of surveillance technology in all these drafts, and the departments that use that are outside of police. So if we're saying this truly applies to surveillance technology, it needs to encompass all police or all city departments. If not, we're saying this is just a police surveillance ordinance and that's it. So I think it's important that it applies to all departments. Community development, public works are the ones that use GPS tracking location. The fire department did have drones on their list. The state act only applies to law enforcement agencies, the way I'm reading it, the freedom from drone surveillance, but I think it would make sense for it also to internally also apply to any department using drones. And then we're also creating whole new departments like alternative response that may use some of these technologies that would potentially be outside of police department. So I really do think this should apply to all departments, and I think that it's a little premature to make that decision until we finalized some of the definitions and what it might apply to, and if we're talking about truly applying to all surveillance technology or not. So again, I agree with a lot of these changes. I'm not in agreement on only applying to the police department. Also not in agreement on reducing public input days from 60 days to 30. I think we could find some compromise, like 45 to 30 at least, but I think going from 20 to only 20 days of public input period is not accessible and not in line with our other things either. I think we had talked about going down to 30. I think maybe more reasonable compromise would be at least 30 days for the community, and that would be section 2C and kind of 2B, talking about time that would be required to submit to city council before a vote and time that would be required for public to have access and have input on that. I think that's very short. And then also section 2C, I'm confused about subsequent to the submission described in 3B of the surveillance technology use report and use policy. I don't believe there is any section 3B in those policies. So I don't know if we can check what that might be referring to.
All right, so I just want to be clear, which bullet point number?
I'm looking at your actual ordinance version.
Oh, you're looking at the ordinance. I was looking at the bullet point items.
No, the bullet points don't mean as much to me. I can try and look at it on the bullet points. So on your bullet point list, public input period would be numbers 8 and 9.
Right, so that's section 2, B and C. That's what
Yes.
you're talking about? So would you be more amenable to just having it 30 days, both for public input and also for, to be made available to the city council? Because it seems to me like you would have, once it's available to city council, it should be available to the public.
Grace, do you have a response to that?
I would be more open to it than 20 days, absolutely. And I think that's not necessarily the case. Council is, in other instances, given information before the public, like for staff appointments, for example, we're entitled to that information 2 weeks before the vote versus the public only has when the packet comes out and a few days beforehand to review that. So I think that a little more time for council could make sense, but I think at least 30 days for the public.
Mary Alice.
So the way I read B here, 2B, is, and I'll use the original language, at least 60 days prior to seeking approval of surveillance technology or database, the city shall submit to the city council and make publicly available.
I see. So yeah, I think that could make sense for those to be the same number.
Okay,
then.
all right,
Or remove publicly available if it were going to be a longer time period.
right.
Thank you. And then 2C, I'm not understanding the submission described in 3B of the surveillance technology use report and use policy. There is no 3B in those sections.
Oh, there isn't a 3B. I'll have to go find that out.
Okay. Or in practice, I don't know what
Subsequent.
you're referring to there.
I'm wondering if that had to do with the use policy.
While you're looking at that, and this might be a little bit difficult to do with having two folks on the phone, I'd like to just ask to confirm, as if we can, that everyone is on board with using these two documents. I think we have the list of recommended changes or revisions from Mary Alice. I'm hearing some general support for some, but some further questions. But just if folks are okay with, any initial discussion, we can do that. But then as much time as we can kind of devote it to working through these bullet points, because it sounds to me like there's a general acceptance of the framework. It's more a matter of fine tuning. So total straw poll for folks in the room. Are we okay with that general approach of the version 7/7.1 is what we are using, and then we will review those recommended changes to the best of our ability during this meeting? All those in favor?
My hand is up.
Is that a agreement hands up or a question hands up, Chris?
Agreement.
Okay,
Hand
great.
up.
James, does that approach work for you?
Yeah, I agree that what we're going to get to is something between 7 and 7.1.
7.1, okay, thank you. And then I would just ask, considering the work that Grace has done on all of the drafts up till this point, and then the work that Mary Alice and James have done, are folks comfortable with me trying to remain in chair unless Grace wants to retrieve it, so that I'll do my best to try to keep the conversation going? Is that okay? I'm seeing some nods. Okay. I don't remember who had the floor, but
So one
Go
of
ahead,
the
Mary Alice.
questions was with 3B, and I think it should have been 2B. I think that's a typo.
okay, so that
Days subsequent to the submission
2B.
described in 2B of the surveillance technology. I think, but I'm going to have to confirm that.
okay. Any other?
Can I ask where that appears? Where are you looking at that?
Yeah, so James, we're looking at Section 2, Item C, under approval process for surveillance technology, and as it's currently written, and database acquisition or use. We discussed the time period under B of the recommended changes to move from 30 to 60, and there's some language about including the public in that information at that time. But then under C, it says, there's a reference to Section 3B, and there's a question about if that's meant to be 2B.
It's just a typo.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, that's my fault. It should have been 2B.
Grace, I'm going to come back to you, but Charisse has not had a chance to speak yet, so go ahead, Charisse.
I guess the question that I have regarding Section 2, and it's talking about when the police department seeks to acquire, I'm assuming that all of this conversation will be taking place as we are speaking right now, as an open meeting. Right?
Is there any feedback on the manner in which the technology would be presented? I think, part of this does outline what amount of time the public would need to have access. Grace, did you have
Oh, and
any
it's like
feedback on that
everybody can
initial
actually
intent?
come and say something about whether or not the police get this surveillance. So in the meantime, whatever they may be investigating, or whomever they may be investigating, gets to come up actually and even say something about whether or not they get to have their surveillance.
Yes, so someone, even if they're subject to an investigation of a crime, they do still have rights and would be allowed to participate in that
I'm not saying they don't
discussion.
have rights. I'm just saying, what I'm saying is that because your rights don't really really kick in until you get arrested, so to speak, or you're under this kind of thing.
So I have
You wanna-
thoughts, but I'm chairing, so I will not.
But I just want
yeah.
to say, I
Yeah.
want to make a point.
Sure.
The point is that if there's something serious popping off, we're asking our law enforcement to give away the playbook.
So we are asking for transparency in terms of what technology, either the city as a whole or the police department, we need to determine that in this process, is using to surveil our residents. That is the intent of this, to my understanding, Grace, is that, do you want to clarify anything further in terms
Yeah,
of the
maybe I'm
intent of the ordinance?
misunderstanding how this is going to be.
I'm not understanding the question, but this would all be done publicly. None of this would qualify
Okay.
for a closed session, to my understanding.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying too. None of this qualifies as a closed session. So, I don't know. I'm not a law enforcement person. I don't, I've questioned this in my, as we've gone through this process, because as much as we want to keep civil liberties and all that stuff on the table, I keep thinking about the simple fact that a couple of weeks ago, I had two guys shooting at each other less than a block from my house. And the question that I asked the police, the question that the police, when they finally got to show up, asked the one person that saw what happened was, did they turn left or did they turn right?
I'm going to briefly ask that those who are participating remotely, if you're not actively speaking, that you would consider muting your mic, because I think we're hearing the meeting feedback through the speakers and chambers presently.
Okay. Yeah, that was kind of.
Okay, so yeah.
And I say that because if they turned left, then they went to Champaign and we could have possibly caught them.
So I appreciate that feedback. I think there is a bias in that response as well, right? Because ALPRs are not everywhere. So someone could there are ALPRs in the city of Urbana that the university has put up. So if someone turns a certain way on Windsor, for example, you still could go past an ALPR. That does not mean that it would be effective in solving a crime.
And I wouldn't be asking this if it wasn't for my constituents
Right.
asking me.
Yep, I do understand that.
I wouldn't be asking this, but so that's why I'm asking if we're doing this publicly, like we're doing this right now, and we're having this discussion publicly, and we'll be having these discussions publicly. I don't know, to me, it's kind of scary. I don't necessarily want the two guys that were shooting at the intersection to know how we're trying to get them or something.
I guess I would ask, as we work through this process, for you to decide if you don't feel like you can support this ordinance in general. I think what we have in front of us is guidance for how we communicate with our residents about any surveillance technology that we would be using, and it is up to the individual council members to decide what they do or do not support in this item.
I totally agree.
So, Grace, I told you I'd come back to you. Go ahead and speak.
Thank you. I had points going back to section 2, if that's all
Yes.
right. So I think that another option would be, if we're keeping public input period and council for the same amount of time, we could combine B and C. There's kind of no reason to have both if they're both 30 days and B says that it's sent to council and made publicly available.
I think that makes sense.
So I was thinking that we could eliminate C and just put like a sentence on B that just says like, during this time, the public will have the opportunity to submit formal comments.
Yeah.
Oh, are we out of quorum?
Yep. We will be. Let's just take a 5-minute recess.
All right. All right, we have quorum back in chambers. Do we still have Chris and James on the line?
I'm still here.
Okay, I heard both at once. Great. All right, we will move forward. I'm just going to ask again if there are any general comments or feedback about the ordinance, and then I'm going to suggest that we actually work through version 7.1 because the track changes are there, and address items as we work through them, if that is amenable to everyone. Okay, any other general feedback before we dive into the meat? Yes, Mary Alice.
The only thing, I appreciate James adding to it was, and I did say something to Grace about this, there are a couple of sections that we struggled with in terms of trying to streamline it. So while this definitely has track changes in it, there are a couple of sections that we're like, we'd like to make this a little more clear.
Yeah, I think that's great feedback. I think if it's okay, we can make sure we circle back to, this list makes sense to me, but just hearing from different feedback of what works for folks, I think if we can work through it and then revisit and see, did we miss anything, that would be wonderful. Okay, so I'm going to suggest we start from the top, which is number 1 on the bullet pointed list for Mary Alice and James, and also is the first strike through on 7.1, which is the feedback about removing databases. I heard a little conversation, and I'm curious just if there's any other feedback or if we want to take a straw poll on that item. So any other feedback on the removal of databases from the title of this ordinance and throughout the text? So folks on the phone, any feedback on that?
No.
Sticking with the phone, folks, I heard James, so I'm going to ask James and then Chris if you're willing to provide a straw poll of if you would, just to say yes, if you would be supportive of removing databases from this.
Okay.
Does okay mean yes?
Yes.
Okay.
No, my answer is no.
Okay, so we've got 1 yes and 1 no for removing databases. And then, so here in chambers, if you can do a thumbs up, if you would straw poll to remove databases from the text and throughout. I'm seeing all yeses in chambers. So that is information. All right, we will move on. Trying to kind of keep track of both the bullet points and the strike throughs. There's a, in the fourth, whereas there's a recommendation to remove major systems regarding public safety. Any feedback on that item? And I note in number 2 of the list that the recommendation to remove it is based off of the focus of this being on surveillance. So just to provide clarity. So straw poll in the room, we'll start with first. Thumbs up if you're on board with that change. Okay, no objections here. No offense to the folks on the phone, but there are enough yeses here in chambers that I'm not going to ask. Not that your opinions don't matter. Number 3, there's the question about, let me make sure I'm being consistent. Okay, so yes, so the next point is about focusing this in on just the police department and rejecting the inclusion of other parts of the city. We had some initial conversation of Grace expressing concerns about that removal. Is there any other discussion on that item? Grace, go ahead.
Thank you. Sorry, I'll just reiterate that I think if this is truly focused on surveillance technology, then it should be all surveillance technology, and that there are current and potentially future departments that may also utilize surveillance technology, and I think it's important to apply to all of them.
Okay. Folks on the phone, any feedback on that item?
Yeah, I would like
I
to
have my
comment.
hand up.
Okay, I heard James
ahead.
first
Go ahead,
and then Chris. Oh, well, James, I said you first, so you go.
Okay. Part of this is I've been listening to what people say. One of the things I heard Mayor Williams say was that we need to move forward, focusing on what we can do and be aware that we may need to adapt things later, and focusing it on the police surveillance, which is what we've heard the most public feedback about. Seems like the appropriate thing to get this moving forward. I don't see changing this now because of potential future departments that may behave in a way that police surveillance technology concerns people is the reason to go ahead and throw that all in there without it being time.
Okay, thank you, James. Chris, go ahead.
Yes, I agree with many of the points that James just made, but I will say there has been a theme for the last 3 years that to quote unquote clean up these neighborhoods, that all departments need to be a part of that, and that all departments need to engage in all kinds of code enforcement, zoning compliance, and all that, and so that that all departments will be brought in to monitor and enforce for neighborhoods. So I do think that it is incumbent on us to include other departments in tracking what surveillance technologies they are going to be using. And again, James, to your point, we can always change things if things aren't quite, we can tweak it later, but I would like to err on the side of caution. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I heard one straw poll yes and one straw poll no. Any other discussion in chambers before we take a straw poll? Grace, go ahead.
Thank you. Just wanted to respond to a few of those. The point that people are mostly concerned with police surveillance technology, I think may be true, but it's not to say that people are not concerned, because we have heard people who are curious and would like to learn more about how the city tracks their movements all around the city from their cell phones. And that department is not the police department. And we have heard people who would like to have more information and transparency on that sort of tracking. I don't understand the comment that why would we change it now? But you're suggesting to change it. It's currently written that it's all city departments, and you're saying why change it now? But you're suggesting to change it now to only police department. And I understand that things can change, we can revisit it, but again, there's been a lot of examples of things in the city where that was the mentality when it was originally passed, and it's been a decade or more, and it has not been back and revisited or improved. So I do think that I would love to see this passed as completely and encompassing as possible at this point, because I have doubts that it will be revisited in the near future and changed.
Mary Alice?
Yeah, I just kind of wanted to point out something. I think that there is potentially some confusion with the cell phones and the parking meters and people like tracking that information. Visit Champaign-Urbana also tracks, people where they go, but that data is not collected on behalf of the city. There's an external agency that's collecting it. So that data exists out there regardless of what Urbana does. And so I feel like we should be really focused on what data is Urbana collecting, and that would potentially expose privacy risks and so forth. And the cell phone stuff is not stuff that we're collecting. We're just paying to get access to data that's already out there. I feel like it's good for us to start with the police department, because opening it up to public works and to all the other areas, in my opinion, it's going to slow things down. And I'd have to agree with James in that what we keep hearing from the public is concerns about public safety and surveillance on the populace, the people, the residents here in our community. So that has been the focus that I've heard consistently, which is why I'm in support of having this at the moment be focused on that.
Okay, so I would suggest that we take a straw poll on that item, that a thumbs up would be in support of removing, or other agencies, thumbs down would be to keep that broader language. Already telling what I heard from folks on the phone, so thumbs up or thumbs down. Okay, we are tied overall. Because this is not actual action, I'm not going to suggest that we have the mayor weigh in at this time. Councilmember Bishop might be back by the time this comes for a vote. We don't know. So I think we can just note that that is tied at this time. All right, there are some other kind of minor changes on the page that moves into the purpose, but looking at we're going to skip over the other agency pieces. There's a hyphen that's been added for low income. And then in section 1, I'm guessing that seems pretty uncontroversial. Please correct me if I'm wrong, the addition of a hyphen. That there's the clarification of the data it collects. I think there's actually a typo in the list. It says date instead of data under number 4. Any objections to moving from the data it collects to surveillance data?
What number you on?
So it's number 4 on Mary Allison James's list, but we're in section 1 purpose, and there's just a kind of a refining of the language. And then the next section goes into kind of that piece around which departments it applies to. All right. I think those were the only items in section 1. Section 2, again, a lot of these pieces are related to which departments, so we'll move beyond that for now. I'm seeing some grammatical kind of recommendations, seeks instead of seeking, removing or surveillance data, because that's again related to that decision we've already suggested people might be in favor of, removing the data and database kind of language. If there's anything that I'm missing that, as I look through this, that people do want to spend more time on, please let me know. There's also a recommendation to strike through some language related to cross-referencing existing databases. Is there any feedback on that? We're at section 2A under that area, and there's a recommendation for some adjustment in language. Mary Alice, was that a hand? Did you want to speak to that?
Yeah, so when following that kind of thought process in terms of surveillance technology and the data that it collects, we thought it was clear to say using new analytic tools, that's the cross-referencing, right? Okay, on an existing database in a manner which changes the database to surveillance data. So we're trying to take into consideration the fact that you can link things, which would then alter the use policy. And so that's why that language is there.
Thank you for that clarification. Any feedback, Grace?
Thank you. I agree, and that's why I added that changes it to surveillance data in version 7, was trying to encompass that idea of yours, Mary Alice. And then to clarify, when I added and changes to the existing use policy, that is kind of a separate scenario. So like if there were changes to an existing use policy, it would go through this same approval process, not just change in a database that changes the use policy somehow.
Grace, can you clarify, looking at 7.1, if there is any of this strike through or addition that you feel like needs modification? Because some of this, I think you're pointing out, might be additions and track changes from when you brought forward 7 versus 7.1.
Yes, the last sentence in section A is from 7.
Okay.
And then the changes above that are 7.1 from James and Mary Alice. And so I'm fine with their proposed changes. I was just clarifying that very last part and changes to the existing use policy, what I meant by that is that changes to the use policy also require an approval process, not just a database that results in changes to a use policy, because I don't understand how changes to a database would change the policy. It sounded kind of like that's how you were possibly reading it, Mary Alice.
Go ahead, Mary Alice.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. So if I parse this section A, we're talking about acquiring new surveillance technology and updating a use policy. Those are the two basic things that section 2A covers.
And you're saying it would maybe make more sense to put that use policy further up in that paragraph?
I'm saying, yeah, because it was not clear to me until you just made that thing. So basically, to acquire or use new surveillance technology or to change existing use policy, it shall. So moving it, does that make sense?
It absolutely does, yes. I think I just threw it at the end because that's where I put it. But yes, it definitely would make sense up there.
All right, sounds like some additional clarification that somebody hopefully captured in that section. Any feedback from the folks on the phone?
I would agree with those changes.
Okay, thank you. All right, seeing nothing else on 2A, we'll move on to 2B, which we started discussion around. The major piece of this is related to the timeline. It sounded like we were moving in the direction of switching it to combined B and C and keeping it at 30 days. I think other than that, it's pretty much just moving the database piece, which we've already discussed. So I'm going to suggest we do a straw poll, and for convenience, start here in chambers unless there's other discussion that needs to happen related to section 2B/C, since there's a suggestion to combine them. I need a discussion on those before we take a straw poll. Okay, not seeing any. So thumbs up would be to move to 30 days for both. Thumbs down would be to retain the 60. Or we can come back.
Yes to 30 days.
Yes to 30. Thank you, Chris. And
yes to 30 days.
Looks like there's consensus on that straw poll. Okay. So that actually moves us along to item number 11. If you're following along on the numbered list, which is in section 4, just making sure I'm not missing anything else that we haven't already addressed.
I would say that,
Go ahead,
I
Grace.
think a lot of those are starting to get repetitive.
Yep.
Like of just removing database. I think all of 11 through 16 are removing database reference.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep, correct. Yep, thank you. Just reading through in case there's anything hiding. Not that Mary Alice and James are hiding things, just that I'm not capturing on the list. So,
It's always possible.
sneaky. Just kidding. Okay, so I think we are on 17th. Thank you, Charisse. Which is section 5B. Any feedback on that item?
I'm not understanding your point about needs to be compliant with OMA and FOIA and how you're striking out department or database addresses that.
Mary Alice or James, do you have feedback on that question?
I'm reading. Give me a sec. Provide all members of council with a complete copy. James might correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know if this has to do with the proposed non-disclosure agreement. So I guess one question I have, does surveillance technology have non-disclosure agreements? I mean, why is this in here?
Grace, did you want to respond to that?
From my understanding, there are the private companies of the technology providers that lock the cities and their representatives into an NDA that has information firewalls that would be probably in a lot of conflict with our own transparency in this ordinance.
Okay, I just wasn't aware. I'd be curious if, when we were looking at Flock, if they had NDAs. So I guess I'll pose that question to staff, if they are aware of any type of NDAs. I just want to be sure that we're not putting the city at any risk, but also providing the relevant data that city council needs in order to be able to make a decision, an informed decision, so.
Yes, I agree. I think that would be great future consideration. I will also just say that this has gone by the city attorney, can definitely go by again. Also has had support from Representative Carol Ammons, Dr. Anita Chan, ACLU, Champaign and State, and Tony Allegretti, attorney and CPRB chair, along with a lot of community experts with backgrounds in technology and surveillance. So I will have to say that some of this also goes over my head, but this is what I have heard from experts. And yes, there are NDAs from the private companies, I believe including Flock, that prohibit a lot of the disclosure for how their technology is used and who it's sold to after they collect it.
Thank you both for that feedback. James, just to make sure that you have an opportunity to weigh in on things that you worked on, do you have any other feedback on that item that you want to provide?
Yeah, I'm maybe it's because I'm on Eastern time and we've been at this for a while, but I am not. I scanned through this to try to remind myself why I mentioned OMA and FOIA here. I may have put this on the wrong line.
All right, thank you for that. We can kind of keep an eye and see if there's another piece that might tie to that. Sharice, go ahead.
I was just thinking, James, that you probably put OMA and FOIA because of what I was talking about before, how we have to, all of these are going to be, these meetings or whatever, or will be done according to the Open Meetings Act. And of course, they can be FOIA'd, the information from this. And so it's just, if we're going to talk about purchase, acquisition, and new surveillance technology, so to speak, then the public and everybody and their mama will be able to know what we're purchasing, what we're acquiring, what we need it for, and so on and so forth. I think that's why you put that there, just as a reminder that all of this will be subject to those particular mandates, including an NDA.
Thank you for that feedback. It sounds like maybe some additional information from a previously considered technology would be helpful. If we do keep that section, we just need to add a period at the end of the sentence too. The next item is 18 on the list, which is a suggestion to strike 5C. Grace?
Thank you. And I think the important part of this section, so I hear what you're saying, because of specific investigation, that's not what this is about. The sentence that ties this whole paragraph together, the important one, is actually in the middle. The whole point is that the city won't share data, blah, 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 to a non-government entity in exchange for monetary or other form of consideration. So this section is not saying that we couldn't share data with a government entity or even a non-government entity, as long as we're not doing it to make money off of it or some other benefit, is the point here. So this is not prohibiting data sharing in and of itself. It's prohibiting data sharing when we're selling it to a non-government entity.
Okay,
I don't know if that clarifies things here.
So the way I read this.
One second, sorry, Mary Alice. Just a reminder for folks on the phone, if you can mute yourself when you're not speaking, because we are getting weird feedback. Go ahead, Mary Alice.
I was getting kind of turned around in some of this legalese. When I first read this, I was thinking to myself, oh, this means that any city couldn't go, sorry, not any city employee couldn't go to somebody's house and say, hey, can you share your Ring doorbell with me? Right, because there's been a slew of people who have been coming around breaking windows and, whatever it may be. That's how I read this, are hereby prohibited from entering into any contract or other agreement that facilitates the receipt of privately generated and owned surveillance data. So that to me says a police officer can't go knock on somebody's door and says, can you share your Ring data with me? And so what I'm hearing you say, Grace, I believe, is that you don't want the city selling data that we collect to people who are not non-government. That's double negative there. Is that correct?
I think the rest of the sentence answers that, where it says, or government generated or owned surveillance data to a non-government entity in exchange for money.
But it is an or there.
So it sounds like
So private or government data.
buying
So
or
either
selling
one.
data.
I'm sorry?
Sounds like there are concerns about buying and selling government, selling, let me try that again, buying data either from individuals or government offices, right? Like that we should be purchasing.
But we do purchase data, but this is concerned with selling data.
Yep, so this is saying that we would not be allowed to sell information or data to a non-government entity that is either government or privately owned or generated. So that's the or. So whether it's privately owned or generated surveillance, or it's government owned and generated surveillance, we are prohibited from selling that to a non-government entity in exchange for money or other considerations. I know it is a lot, but there's also that balance of the legalese and the legal enforceable.
know.
And there were a lot of lawyers that worked on this, and definitely trying to strike the balance of being understandable to the layperson and then also holistic enough, because the legally enforcing language is sometimes this overly wordy, but that's how they say it.
So I'm going to make a suggestion that, if this is the clearest language to keep in compliance with that legal standard, that maybe it needs to stay, but also that this could be a section for review to see if there's a way to keep it legally toothsome while also making it clear.
Yeah, I was just going to say, maybe Matt could help us make it a little more clear, keeping into the...
I think it would be better if the selling part was moved up to the front.
Yeah, I think that might help with that clarification. And then, yes, perhaps that would be an area Matt would help us with. I'm seeing a nod. Thank you. Appreciate that. All right, let's keep things moving. Next one is in 6A. We've got some pieces about...
We're keeping 18?
I think good question. My understanding is rather than taking a straw poll on this, I think we need to see a version that is a little bit easier for people to understand. And if there isn't a way to make that clear and still legally binding, that we just need like a footnote or something that's in lay speak so that we can be clear on what we're agreeing to.
Can we just say the city will not buy or will not sell?
Right. So let's not do what I did and say it backwards. So, but I think like making that clear that the goal, the intent is to make it clear that the city of Urbana will not sell our residents' data, whether to another government office or to a private company.
You just hit the nail on the head.
Well, I'm not an attorney, so I'm gonna leave that one to Matt. But but I appreciate that. I think that this is where that discussion is helpful, right? Because if we are not sure what we're agreeing to, then other folks who are reading this might not be too. So, and I do appreciate that balance that Grace noted of having that legal expertise in drafting this, and that's why these conversations are so important. Okay, so 6A, I think a lot of this we have addressed or have flagged to come back to. Some of this is just typing out 30 as well as having it numerically listed. And then some stylistic suggestions. And then we have a note for 6BI through VI, so 1 through 6, that it feels overly complicated and needs to be streamlined. I'm going to suggest, unless there are any objections to it, that be another section to review with the city attorney to make sure that we don't lose the intent while trying to make it easier to digest.
What part is this?
Section 6, and it's all the B stuff.
Yeah. That there's a lot more legalese there, right? So just seeing, is there a way that we can make that more understandable for folks without that expertise, without losing the I'm just going to stick with twosomeness behind it. Okay. Then 6C.
What
23, 26? Did I skip? What?
We're on 23.
23, okay, that's what I thought. 23. Yeah, 6C. So there's a suggestion in terms of language. Grace, was that a hand? Go ahead.
I'm fine with considering that. I'm not willing to die on that hill for the section 6C. But again, the point there was to give the city more flexibility if there were a need for an upgrade or a patch with things that, especially as technology develops, that, you know, photo-enabled light bulbs are like a common thing. And so like if we, you know, a couple years from now, all of our city streetlights were high-tech LED that have some camera tech capability, and the only way that they could keep working is if we make that upgrade. Without Section C, we wouldn't be able to do that. They would have to go through, call it an exigent circumstance, which I don't know if that would qualify for, or have to go through the whole approval period. So we could remove 6C, but it gives the city the option to have more flexibility if there were a patch or something that was needed.
Mary Alice?
So
No, we weren't.
sorry.
Sorry, James, is it okay if I let Mary Alice take this?
Yeah, sure.
Go ahead.
So I think for me, what we're trying to stay here is that if there is some patch or upgrade to a piece of technology that gives additional functionality that wasn't previously approved, they can't use the additional functionality. And so I feel like we should absolutely allow the city to upgrade or update, might be a better phrase, update software or technology, and for whatever it may be. They could be patching something that's not a cybersecurity problem. It's a fix that the bug never worked, right? Let me step back for a second. It has a use that we approve, but maybe it breaks, and so they have to apply a patch. So what I'm saying is if we allow the city in this instance to be able to apply patches or upgrades necessary, but not use any new functionality until it's approved. That's what I was trying to get at. But James is the IT person, so he probably says it better than me.
James, do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, I can say that Mary Alice pretty much covered it. The goal is not to get rid of Succeed, but to make it more specific about you can do patches, but if you get new features, you have to follow this process because that technology didn't exist before. You have to get approval.
Thank you for that. And this is just for reference if folks are here in chambers that or whatever. This is item 23. The suggested replacement language is included there for 6C. I did hear in this discussion, in addition to software, that there might be an interest in saying or other technology. Or was the intent to just specifically keep this to software?
I understood this was strictly about patching software.
Okay. Grace?
I guess I'm not understanding the suggestion. If you have simplified rewording, happy to consider that.
That's 23 on this list.
Yeah, but I'm not seeing the suggestion.
I think it's just to say when software is updated for the city, if new features include capabilities that could be covered by this ordinance, those new features should be approved as described.
Which is already covered in the ordinance, so I feel like it doesn't add anything. What this is saying is, so you could say that, yes, we couldn't use them under this ordinance anyway, but the difference is acquire. Under this ordinance, we could not acquire or pay for that patch either without going through the full approval. So that's the point of 6C, is that it allows for acquiring or potentially purchasing something for a patch while still not using it. If we eliminated C altogether, or as the wording here, it would just, it would have no effect. You would have to go through the whole approval process.
Mary Alice?
I don't know how to say this any more directly. We're not trying to remove 6C. We're trying to have it make sense in the context of what happens when you patch software.
Yeah, James, thank you for that clarification. What I'm hearing is a little bit of like a further clarification that's in the existing version of 6C, but this might be another one of those areas that perhaps the language is a little confusing. Mary Alice, did you have something you were going to say as well?
Yeah, so I think that I will go back and I'll propose just a replacement for this and keeping so that people can think through whether or not that covers everything that they feel it should cover.
I think that we're at a point that people can look at that section independently is what I would suggest, so that we don't wordsmith this to death by committee, if that's okay, but recognizing that no one's trying to get rid of 6C, but we do need to make sure that it maintains the integrity of the intent, even as we're trying to work on clarifying the language.
Yes.
All right, next is under section 7. A, there's a suggestion for simplification of language. There's a strike through.
Oh, it's just collected by surveillance technology again.
Yes. I think that's consistent with other things we've discussed. Is there any concern with that?
I will just also bring awareness that by my watch, it is 10:20. The clock in chambers does say 10:19, but my watch says 10:20. So just being mindful of time, we will have to motion to extend if we hit 10:30.
Is that something that people would like to address at this time?
I will say section 7 is complicated.
So is there a motion to extend?
I'm on Eastern time, and I'm not going to support extending.
Okay. Is there anyone who would like to extend the meeting, or we want to plan to stop at 10:30?
I would love to stop at 10:30.
Okay. All right. Let's keep charging ahead then. Okay. So 7, we looked at 7A, section 7. So point number 25 is overall potential issue to be discussed. How do we know if the date could be useful for
Data.
data? Thank you. Could be useful for defense.
And I would suggest that we maybe table that one, or
Okay.
individuals could have conversations with the city attorney, or I could be happy to connect you with all the lawyers who collaborated in putting this together.
All righty. So we'll put a pin in 25 because it sounds complicated. 26, which is section 8. There's a recommendation for that section too.
To table that section. It just opens up a whole another layer that's going to have to be worked through, and it's not part of CPRB right now. So I feel like it.
Okay, so there's a recommendation to table it based on the fact that it's not currently part of CPRB. Any feedback on that? Grace?
Well, just that I definitely don't agree, and we could have CPRB representatives or talk to that commission would maybe be helpful before deciding that for them. And I did add that sentence there about if it's not logistically feasible to meet with CPRB, then the department would just present that to council if there were a lack of a quorum or some issue with the scheduling as kind of that out. So it just has CPRB review the annual report and the initial report and policy for each technology. B just says that the CPRB and Human Rights Commission will hear complaints to their board or commission, which is not currently the setup. They're appeals only, to my understanding. And then C, that council, CPRB, and human rights can have access to information upon request. So I think it's pretty reasonable, and it's pretty reasonable oversight. Some of the others from model recommendations from ACLU and Policing People's Academy through the University of New York City, New York, recommend creating a whole other commission just to oversee surveillance, which I think is a stretch. And CPRB, from the members I've talked to and the chair, are really eager to be more involved and have a more active role in the city, and would be really happy to take on something like this.
Any discussion from folks on the phone?
My hand is up.
Go ahead.
I just want to confirm with Alderperson Wilkin that I too have heard from the CPRB, while not speaking for them about specifics, they are very much interested in a lot of changes and would like to be more involved.
Okay. James, did you have any comments? This is probably the final item we will get to today. Go ahead.
I think we do know, we all know that we need to revise the CPRB ordinance, and I would like to put off Section 8 for this pass until we are able to do that holistic reworking and set them up for success.
Okay, for time, I'm going to suggest we take a straw poll on this item and then call no. You want to wait to go ahead, Grace?
I would just say this is a huge decision point that I would like a little more discussion and hear
That
from
is perfectly
CPRB.
fine.
I think this is a really big decision. And I will say that, reminder that we've been putting off updating the CPRB ordinance for at least 5 years that I've been following. So I really don't want to hold this up on that any longer because it seems like it's not happening anytime quickly.
Okay, well, this might be where we pick back up next time then, because we're not extending, so we have 5 minutes. So thank you for everyone's participation, and Grace, would you like the chair back?
I suppose. Thank you.
You can have it.
Yes, thank you so much for chairing that, Jaya. And I know we have council input, but did you have anything you wanted to add while you're free of chair on this discussion?
No, I appreciate everyone working with me through this.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Okay, last item, council input and communication. Would anyone like to share from council tonight? Yes, Sharice.
I would just like to take this opportunity to send out my condolences to the Ashby family. Chaplain Dave passed, and if you never got to meet him, you really missed meeting a wonderful human being. I'd like to give my condolences to Battalion Chief Mark Ashby and his family, and thank him for sharing his father with us for as long as he did. And I really appreciate and felt honored to have the opportunity to talk with Daddy Dave. So just my condolences go to his family.
And Mary Alice, did you have?
I just wanted to say thank you, Jaya, for really stepping up tonight. I really appreciate it. It's been, and I feel like we're really making some movement on this, and so I appreciate everybody's discussion tonight and input.
Any other council input from those on the phone?
I just have one brief thing to say. Thanks to the work of the school district naming committee that I shared some time with. There's a proposal tomorrow going to the school board to call the school the 6th grade center on the Flossie Wiley campus. So that's how they're going to recognize Flossie Wiley into the future. Is that parcel of land that it's always been on, that school's been on, is going to be named Flossie Wiley, and it will be recognized appropriately.
My hand is up.
Okay, go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank Jaya for taking on the chairman duties tonight. It's a tough one, and I appreciate her effort.
Okay, thank you. And no further council comment, no further business. We are adjourned.